22nd Better Together event with Cassandra Clare.
Here to celebrate Queen's book launch. I like that there's a little warning sign that comes up when you turn this on that says everyone can see and hear you. And you're like, oh my God.
I've actually done this like before by accident and didn't realize, like I didn't see that everyone could see and hear you. And I was just live chilling for like 10 minutes. So I'm glad that that's a thing. But yeah, thank you so much for being here today. We're going to chat fandom and Better Together and how they go along with each other. Yeah, should we start with some just like intro to Better Together stuff, I guess?
Okay. Because want to introduce your new book and kind of tell us a little bit.
Sorry, my mom is behind the camera going like this, so I must have lipstick on my teeth.
Behind my camera, walking around with our cat on his head. I'm trying not to pay attention.
But anyway, if you guys don't know, Better Together is a story about two sisters who are navigating their quarter-life crisis era where they have, it's like the end of your teens, early 20s, where you kind of just go through this existential crisis about what you're going to do with your life. And their parents have had a really messy divorce and they've been apart for 10 years and they end up meeting up by accident at this retreat called Rediscover Yourself Retreat. And they reacquaint themselves with each other and kind of swap notes about their parents and realize like it was kind of really shitty what they did separating them for so many years. And they decide to switch places and go home in each other's place to confront their parents. And along the way, they run into some romance and they run into some like self-reflection. Can you run into self-reflection? But
some magic. They run into
some magic. Yeah, there's a dash of Freaky Friday magic that comes in there and makes things real fun. It's a really fun comedic take on divorce and being a child of divorce. But yeah, there's lots of romance and sister stuff, family drama. Yeah.
It's awesome and fun. And I know we wanted to kind of talk about fandom. I just wanted to kind of quickly ask you if there was a genesis for Better Together, if it's rooted in things that you maybe are a fan of. I recognize that the premise of the book actually sounded a little bit to me like a novel idea that Shane talks about in the first book. And about the twins and like I think they go to a school and they discover that like there's a teacher that's their father and like all that. So anyway, it sounded to me like a little bit like a twist on that story, and I was wondering if that was intentional.
Yeah, well, it's really cool that you read that. Thank you. But anyway, yeah, so I knew I wanted to write about sisters and I wasn't sure exactly what direction I was going to go in. So when I did write Shane's like novel idea, I kind of put the seeds of what I was thinking maybe of writing for book 2 in there. And a couple of people asked me that when I first talked about it being a sister book. And I was like, it would have been cool if I knew exactly where I was going to go and could have put that in there. But it was still just like in the foundations of making the story up at that point. So that was a little bit of a seed, but then the other Freaky Friday and Parent Trap sort of stuff came later when I was like, this will be super depressing if there's like just all this family drama and no lighthearted fun. And I don't like writing depressing stuff. I like writing just like super fun, happy making. So I was trying to balance that with those fun tropes.
I could totally see that. Yes, there's definitely self-discovery, but there's also a lot of fun and some silliness and wackiness, and we love that stuff. So in the spirit of silliness and wackiness and fandom, would you fan cast your book for us?
Oh my gosh. I for this book, I haven't thought about it so much because it just came out, and anytime I try to fan cast now, I end up picking actors who are like older than 20 because it's all the new people. And I remember like when I was a youth and authors would fan cast as older actors. I'm like, how do you not know anyone young? But now I feel old because I don't know anyone super young. But for Jamie, I don't know. For Siri. For who I do know,
Okay.
the Terry, the camp not camp counselor, she's a retreat owner.
Director.
I always just pictured as Janice from Friends. Like I pulled her right out of the Parent Trap and put her in as Terry, and I just had so much fun, like writing in Janice's voice. That oh my god, sort of Long Island accent, and. Yeah, I'm failing at this casting question. I have to think it through.
And I can never think of anything. So I just felt like.
Yeah. Did you ever have a cast in mind for your books? I just feel like when you're writing, don't you kind of create people in your head? Because that's what
you do, and you tend to think about it mostly when people ask you. And I remember that like really early days, I did have like a fan cast up on my website for the Mortal Instruments, but then once it was actually made into a movie, I took it down because it seemed bonkers to have a fan cast up when there was an actual cast. And of course, I was wrong about everybody. You never like wind up with the people that you think of as fan cast who wind up being actually in your movie or your show or whatever. I've never heard of that happening.
And then does it like feel bad? I feel like I would feel bad if something became. I don't know, if I want this to be a film in the future and it gets casted and I say I want a specific actor to play someone and then it's not, then that, I don't know, does it feel weird to have them?
I've taken it down early enough that probably nobody involved in the movie saw it, so I got away with it.
Yeah, I feel like
I never did it again because I was like,
if you get it out fast enough, it's not going to be weird. Yeah, I remember Stephanie Meyer had a fan cast for Bella, and then it wasn't that actress. Yeah, that one really sticks out to me because then it was Kristen Stewart. It was like completely different.
It's never the person you think it's going to be. It never is.
Yeah.
You just have to accept that the fan cast is just kind of a way of sort of referring your readers to a visual
phase. Yeah. I feel like that's why it's more fun to cast older actors because they'll never be cast. Like for Pilot, I would tell people Ryan Reynolds if he was 20.
I know people are like, what do you want for Jason? I'm like Robert Downey Jr. because I love him. And even
that would be grand.
40 years too old. But yeah, it's like, sure, you can play all the parts.
I feel like they put him in as every role in your novels. It's like Robert Downey Jr. as Magnus. Robert Downey Jr. is like, I've seen him all over the place.
So, the parents in your books are big Game of Thrones. Yes. And I wondered if that was based on something from your real life, if your parents are fans of anything, or if this is just, if you have friends who are big Game of Thrones fans.
So what that came from was like originally I was thinking like if I had kids and I immediately was like, you must love Harry Potter, and just all their life tried to force them into it. Like, what would that be like for them when they got older? And I originally actually had it as Harry Potter, and then there was all that hurtful stuff, and I wanted to take it out and change it. And luckily, their names worked really well for Game of Thrones. I just thought that it would be really fun if they just hated what their parents were obsessed with, because last book, that I wrote, Shane was just such a fan of so many different things, and I really thought it would throw people off to have them be like not a fan of reading at all. Their parents love reading, and their parents like have the big bookcase, and just how that affected them. But I obviously loved Game of Thrones and had a grand old time watching that series. And I needed something like old enough that the parents could be in college when it was coming out and like have a hardcore fandom phase before they were like full adults. And it worked out. Fit. I panicked when I had to change that because I had to find a fandom. Yeah, I had to find a fandom that fit like the timeline and that like people could be obsessed with in that way. And,
Well, Game of Thrones is a good one. It's a big world with like a lot of stuff in it, and I think that's always really helpful.
Yeah, everyone hasn't read it, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But Game of Thrones comes into play.
Spoiler. It's just like a neat, character note. And I think it's always fun to see big fans in books because I think it's not something that people write about all the time.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a lot of people are worried to put in pop culture stuff. I mean, at least that's the idea I've gotten through the years, but I put in so much stuff. Like I get better. I dropped so many so many book titles. I've got A City of Glass not in there.
That was nice. I was excited to see that. But yeah, I mean, so your parents, not to get too personal, but like, indeed, were they big fans of anything? We can talk about.
Yeah, no, I want to definitely talk about this. So it's weird how, like, I feel like all the music my dad would play all the time. He was a huge fan of Bruce Springsteen, and I just like accepted it as something I hear all the time, but didn't listen to the lyrics ever. Like, I don't know what he's talking about in any of the songs because I've been listening to them for so long. They're just like background music. And then I watched Blinded by the Light. Did you see that film?
That was super cute.
It was so good. And I was just like, wow, I've never like he heard these lyrics. So it's just and anyone who hasn't seen the movie, it's about a Pakistani high schooler in London who like discovers Bruce Springsteen, and just his lyrics really speak to him. And I was listening to these lyrics like, oh my gosh, these are amazing. I never even knew he was singing about this stuff because it's just been background. And I feel like that's a lot of the stuff that my parents really loved. It just like became something I knew about, but wasn't a fan of because it was their thing. And that's kind of in the book with the Game of Thrones. Yeah, what about you?
Oh, okay. My dad also a big Bruce Springsteen fan, so there you go. He's always Bruce Springsteen, the greatest lyricist who has ever lived. And it's funny because I also wasn't that interested in Bruce Springsteen until I met my husband, who plays guitar, and was like, Bruce Springsteen is the greatest lyricist that ever lived. And I was like, huh.
Like, maybe.
I was like, okay, I'm going to investigate this. And I was like, oh, actually, he is actually a really great lyricist. And he writes these incredible songs that each one is like a story. And I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't paying attention. I think we do tend to often sort of dismiss our parents' interests as weird, or we don't want to, be involved in it because it's our parents' thing. So I would say my dad was a huge fan of classic science fiction and fantasy. He had masses of sci-fi and fantasy. And I read all of it. So I read everything when I was a kid. I'm sure you did too. And like, my parents did have the massive bookshelf. It was completely divided down the middle. So there's my dad's science fiction fantasy books and my mom's mystery books. She loves mysteries. Cool. And so I read all of my dad's books and I read all of my mom's books. And so I became sort of an unholy combination of the two. I was super in love with fantasy and magic, but also super into mysteries. And my mom's a huge Anglophile. So any British mystery, Dorothy Sayers, all the Agatha Christie books, all the Niall Marsh books, everything like that she loved and I read. So I had a really pretty good working knowledge of the British class system.
Nice.
All of my dad's books about spaceships and vampires and magic. I mean, I read a lot of his books when I was too young to even understand what was going on in them. I read Lord of the Rings when I was way too young to really get it. I loved it.
I tried to read it young and I couldn't.
When I was a really little, I could not get past all the Hobbit real estate that's at the beginning. It's just like 3 chapters of like Frodo trying to sell his apartment. I can't do it.
I was just like, this is boring. I like tried when I was 10. It didn't work out.
Right. He's trying to sell his like Hobbit apartment, and like some of his relatives want to buy the apartment, but he doesn't want them to buy the apartment. And I was like, this is all just going right by me. I'm like way too young for this. I didn't get it at all. And I had to go back, many years later and read it. And then I loved it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like
I'm trying to combine their interests in your novels. I like that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I ended up like a weird mash of like an interest in both of those things. I love mysteries and I read them all the time, and I love science fiction and fantasy and I read that all the time and sort of moosh them up. There's a lot of mystery elements to the Shadowhunters books. They're almost always solving some sort of mystery. And so I love the sort of structure of mysteries, but I also learned all of this sci-fi fantasy stuff from my dad. And I learned about fandom from my dad because he would take me with him when he went to to bookstores to get his book signed by like famous authors who were
That's so
authors of
cool.
and fantasy. So it was cool, but I was totally, you look back and you're like, man, that was wasted on me when I was a child. Like I met all these cool authors, and like that my dad was a fan of. And only like now do I look back and I'm like, man, I should have said something to them, or if only I had known I was going to like wind up really liking their books. But I met other people there who were friends of my dad's because they all like the same kind of books. And so I think my mom also had book clubs, and so they would meet at her house once a week. And
your parents sound really cool.
Book obsessed. My whole family's very book obsessed. So
I'm cool.
She was unlike them in that way, but I think it really gave me the sense that people come together about books. Like I got it about TV and movies until later, but at that time I was like, people come together when they like the same books. And so that's my intro to sort of the idea of fandom and how it worked, because my mom's mystery book club was the same as my dad going and meeting these people at science fiction fantasy bookstores and talking to them about sci-fi books.
Yeah, I feel like I was just like the opposite with books, because I was the only one in my family who was really interested in reading. So I had to like find them for myself, like at the bookstore, and I'd like get obsessed with one series that I found. And then of course, there was Harry Potter and like Dan Brown, and I was like, what else do I read after these? I don't know. Like, what else is there? And then finally Twilight. I started hearing the word YA. I was like, what's that? That's the section Twilight's in. Okay, that's where I go, and that's where I find things to read. And that opened up the idea. That didn't even open. That's opened up the idea of YouTube, and then I started talking about books, and then like books started to be a community thing for me, and I found my people, and it was so nice. Fandom, even for Harry Potter, like I was so isolated because the internet didn't really exist in the beginning, and then I was so young, I didn't know that things existed, like forums and stuff. I didn't know about fan fiction until college, but yeah, it was really Twilight that introduced me to fandom. There were so many people that I knew that liked it. And I was like, finally, people like reading. Like we could talk about books. And the Twilight podcasts were actually where I found your books, because they started reading a book every month. In addition to talking about Twilight, they talk about like their book of the month. And City of Bones was their book of the month. And I was like slightly spoiled because I didn't know it was. I listened to the episode anyway, and I heard about like the twist at the end. But I was like, erase. And I went and read it. And it was obviously like, I loved it. Fell in love with Jace. But yeah, fandom for like, I feel like my first fandom was like the American Girl books.
Oh my God, I remember those. Yeah. So that was your first one? Were you like, did you write fan fiction or make up stories or anything like that?
I mean, like I thought about them all the time. I had my mom order them all. Like they came in little box sets for each girl. And like, it was such a singular thing because I also, again, didn't know anyone who was reading them, but it was like my fandom. Like I love the American Girls and I know all their backstories. And that's my first like little kid fandom, I think.
Mine was Sherlock Holmes, which is really dorky. I apologize, but mine was like 9. I think my dad wanted. This is a very boring story. My dad had a big project he wanted to do, and he wanted to do it as far away from like humankind as possible. So he moved me and my mother to the mountains of Switzerland, miles from anybody else. And I had no one to spend time with, and there was no internet and no phone. So
that's when you get into books.
Yeah, or you become like a tiny little sociopath or something. But like, I would be like, books. I need to read books, and like, I read all the time. But like, I was running out of books because I had nothing to do but read. And so my mom like went and borrowed a full set of like all the Sherlock Holmes books. And I didn't know anything about them. So I just started reading through them. And I got to the part, I don't think this is a spoiler because 150 years old, but where Sherlock dies. And I cried for like a week. And then my mother was like, the next book. So I read the next book and I was like, he came back.
That's such a joyous experience.
I started writing little stories about Sherlock Holmes, and so that's
Oh,
my first fandom, and like little
fanfiction.
mysteries. Like people, I mean, they're real bad. I should try to find them, but it'd be like a lady came to Sherlock Holmes's apartment. My cat is missing. She said, "I will find your cat." And Sherlock Holmes, and he did find her cat because he was the best detective.
I mean, those are gems though. Like, and like you said, if you found them, it'd be so great. I feel like I used to write little stories all the time too. And I remember this one where I would like always go back to it when my parents just got a computer. And of course, like I don't have it, but it was like my go-to fun thing to do at home every day after school. I was like, I can write a book because the computer has a program that I can write on.
Yeah. I was really excited when I got a Mac Classic when I was like 12, which would like eventually became like a plant pot. But like, at the time it was a totally reasonable computer to have. And before that I had handwritten everything. And so when you realize that you can type stuff out and it will be saved, it is very exciting.
Yeah. I used to do, this is another thing kind of connected to the American Girl magazines. I had those magazines and those were like my Bible. And they also did these Amelia's notebooks where it's kind of like a book that's a journal. Like it's a girl who wrote in her journal every day and you read that. And so I would like make my own journals and like do doodles in them like her and like kind of imitate her. And it made it like so that I love writing journal entries. And so in all of my books, when I'm drafting them, I end up with like so many journal entries because I just find it so fun. And then I ended up deleting all of the ones in Better Together, but I had so many in there. It's like I can't do this again, but it was fun to get to know the characters that way.
It's actually a great way, I think, to get to know your characters. So it's not like wasted work, even if it doesn't end up in the book, because writing journal entries from their point of view, I think it's a really like that is not an unusual way, I think, to get to know like how your characters think and just how they operate.
Yeah, definitely get to know their brains.
Right. Just write diary entries from their point of view, what they did that day, how they feel about whatever. You get their voice.
Yeah.
What you're really looking for there.
Yeah, that's a great way to settle in. Okay, I want to ask you about your fandom. I want to ask you about Shadowhunters. So when did you start to feel the weight of like a fandom following you? And how was that? Like just how did it feel? And was it overwhelming or was it just like the most exciting thing to have so much fan art and so many people like writing fan fiction and doing all this stuff for your characters? Did it feel like an invasion at first? Like, these are my characters, don't touch them?
No, totally not. I was really happy about that people were excited. I mean, like it's weird, your first book comes out and you're sort of like, you're the person who's excited about it. You've been working on it for 2 years or 3 years or however long, and it comes out. And I remember like the first thing I did was go to Barnes and Noble and like stare at the book, it's on the shelf, like stare creepily. And
you got to do that.
It's a rite of passage. You have to do that. Barnes and Noble must be used to people like coming in and staring at their books. It's probably just like, all right. But like, and then once people started to get like enthusiastic about it, really was about City of Ashes, City of Glass, like around there. Cause I think you need like enough story for people to get invested in how it's going to turn out. And I think people, they liked the first book. They were horrified by the ending. They wanted to know what would happen after that. But like, I think I didn't feel like I have a fandom until somewhere around City of Ashes or City of Glass. And I remember just being like, I think it was because people started talking about the book and I would come across them talking about the book and doing this stuff. And I think what it feels a little bit like is you're sort of like, oh my God, they're just doing this on their own without me, like they don't need me. And they can have this whole thing without me. And so you feel a little bit like, whoa, like this kind of sense of, I think, being slightly freaked out that this is happening, and then, it grows beyond that, if it gets bigger in their Tumblr communities and Facebook communities and, all this other stuff.
It's like takes on a life of its own and is running away without you.
It does. And I think you have to learn kind of how to be the creator in a fandom because it's not something anybody ever teaches you. And I think still it isn't, it's something people have advice about. And they're often just sort of like, eh. And so you have to learn how to be a creator who is helpful, I think, and hopefully gives people insight into your books, but doesn't step on their stuff. You want them to come up with their own theories and you want them to come up with their own ideas and you don't want to come in and be like, wrong, you're wrong.
So many of my theories have been so wrong.
I like your theories. You've given me so much trouble over the years, though, because people like you're really attached to your theories, and then they write me and they're like, "Why did this not happen?" And I'm like, it wasn't what I was doing."
So sorry.
Really funny. I'm like, I wonder what that's from. But like, I like that. I really love fan theories because I feel like it's so cool to see how people put the pieces of your books together and extrapolate and think and are like, with the things they find significant. And sometimes it's the things you put in there that are, really significant. You want them to kind of grab onto those pieces. And sometimes
it's like a random.
Sometimes you're just like, oh man, I don't even remember saying that. Like somebody had a whole theory about like Jace because he had a chipped tooth. And I was like, he has a chipped tooth?
I don't remember that either.
I didn't remember that either. But like, I remember coming across it. They're like, Jace is secretly, this kind of like, I don't remember, like a shape-changing demon or something. And we know this because we have.
Oh my God.
I was like, wow. But I was impressed by the creativity and thoughtfulness that went in. I mean, I feel like it's
mind blowing when like it comes together. I mean, from the theory side of it, because you do so much foreshadowing in little ways. And so like when you do think of something that fits all your little pieces, it just like gets you so excited. Like, I figured it out. I know what she was thinking. And then like 90% of the time it's so wrong.
I mean, it's hard to. I remember, being in the Harry Potter fandom and all of the theories that people had about how the book were going to turn out, and 90% of them were wrong. Because you can't necessarily guess what someone is going to do, and it's not like a mark of how good a fan you are, or how good a reader you are, or anything like that to be accurate. Like what I love is when people get involved and they have these complex theories and they're based on this sort of stuff in, that's in the canon of the books. And, sometimes people were right. Everybody guessed that like Snape was in love with Lily, and he was. So, okay, they're right about that. But then there were plenty of other things that people guessed that were important that weren't important, or, that people fixed on as significant, and they didn't turn out to be significant, but then something else would turn out to be significant. And you can't like totally predict. So I think the main thing to do is just to remember to have fun with it. Like, don't take it too seriously. Don't freak out if your theory doesn't turn out to be correct. You had a good theory, and that was awesome.
I mean, that's the best part of making the theories, like coming up with it. It's so much fun. And when I get a Shadowhunters theory right, it's the best feeling. I ran around the apartment thinking that I was right about one of the theories about was it Chain of Iron? Yeah. And then it was wrong later on. That's why, it was some stuff with Wayland the Smith. I got so excited.
That was See, but the thing is, you were like mostly right, because there was a bunch of foreshadowing about Wayland Smith. It just wasn't going exactly the direction.
It wasn't where I thought it was. But like I messaged Kat and Jesse. I was like, you guys, I was right about something. I was like, I should be vlogging this. I'm glad I waited. But it's such a great feeling. Let me see what I've got here that I wanted to ask you. I just wanted to say, like, so what's the hardest part of it for you before we move on, like, of the queen of the fandom?
Oh, I mean, I think it's just figuring out how to like be a good creator type in a fandom and not, step on people creatively, but answer their questions honestly. Like, I don't want to lie. I never want to tell people things that aren't true when they ask questions. A lot of times I'm just like, no spoilers, but sometimes they'll have issues they want me to address. And I'm like, boy, how do you walk that line of addressing an issue that may be significant to someone, yet you don't want to spoil the book? Because, it's that sort of decision of like, how do I do this for you? Or like, without wrecking the reading experience. And you're not just wrecking it for one person, you're wrecking it for everybody. Because you answer a question in public or even in private, it's going to be everywhere. So I've done that before. I think that's a part of the learning experience. I've been like, well, don't tell anyone, but that doesn't work.
You got to just be so careful, I guess.
You do have to be careful. Stressful. I think you have to sort of earn people's trust. You have to be able to say, look, you just have to trust me. I can't tell you, kind of thing. And I think you also have to let them spin out their stuff. You have to not interfere. And sometimes people will be like, I'm so angry because I know this is going to happen. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. And I want to come in and be like, that's not going to happen. You don't need to be mad about this thing because it isn't happening. But
yeah, because you want them to believe it so that when they see that they're wrong, you get that satisfaction. I feel like they get this. I think it's very satisfying. It's very satisfying to like think you know what's going to happen and then like see that it doesn't go that way. So, oh man, she got me. I love it.
I always love that when people do that in a book. Actually, I was going to ask you because I was thinking about Zarar and how he's always trying to engineer like a meet cute, which is totally hilarious. I thought he's like, I'm obsessed with meet cutes, and so I'm just going to keep bumping into people trying to engineer a meet cute. And I was wondering if you had a favorite meet cute in like literature or film.
Oh my gosh. I wish I had thought about this beforehand because I have so many. I love so many different. I don't know why How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is coming up, but they have like that big misunderstanding meet cute where they're both in the bar and they're like, you have to date him and lose him in 10 days. And his friends are like, you have to date her and make her fall in love with you. And I guess is that a meet? I guess that's a meet cute. It doesn't really, it's not. It's by accident, but on purpose.
It's not always like they banged into each other and dropped on.
Yeah.
However you meet in a sort of weird circumstance, I think.
Yeah. I love the ones like the miscommunications during the meet cutes. And there's another one. Oh, in What If It's Us? Is that the name of Adam Silvera and Becky Albertalli's book? They have a really cute meet cute. And then like they separate for ages. They're like in a mailroom and they have this really great moment. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like the Shadowhunter meet cutes, and they're all like rescuing from like a demon attack. Like Tessa is like locked up in a basement.
Yeah, she hits him over the head. That's a meet cute.
That's a great meet cute, actually. Violent but excellent.
I do like a meet cute under duress circumstances. You're running away from something, a dinosaur is attacking, whatever. But I'm trying to have a favorite meet cute. Oh my god.
Yeah, do you have one? It's so hard. There's so many good ones.
I know there are so many good ones. Trying to think. I'm thinking of okay. Well, I really love I'm trying to remember how they met in Anna and the French Kiss because I love Anna and the French Kiss.
I was just trying to think of that too. They're just like in school.
And I think they're at school, and like I don't remember if there's a specific thing. So I'm just like, and then
I'm like picturing them at the table at lunch or something in the cafeteria, right? I don't know.
Technically Bella and Edward. That's a meet cute.
Oh my gosh, that's an iconic meet cute. The meet cute that sparked a million science class meet cutes.
I know. How many other books are there now where people meet in science class? So many.
Yeah, no, after that, I was just like, wow, everyone just meets in science. If you don't have a lab partner that you have a crush on, then you're doomed.
Then, yeah, what are you even doing in biology class? I mean, Katniss and Peeta. It's interesting because she knew him already. But then they wind up being in the Hunger Games together. That I like that. That was good because
I like that too. That like you kind of knew each other, but you never really got to know each other, sort of a thing.
Yeah, I love.
I was just thinking about Emma and Julian.
Well, I love childhood friends. So Emma and Julian.
Yeah.
My like big things. I love Anna and the French Kiss, but I love like Lola and the Boy Next Door so much. Like it totally spoke to my soul because like the fact that like he lived across from her and they could look into each other's windows and they had like their communication. I was like, it was so adorable. And I just love I love that builds off the friendship, like the foundational friendship and the idea that you have all this closeness and like existing intimacy where you have, special ways of talking to each other and you know each other so super well. And I do love that. So I don't know if that counts as because you've known each other forever, but
yeah, I mean, it's like the long game meet cute. It's like the "You Belong with Me" Taylor Swift.
Yes, exactly. I know because she's looking in his window. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
That goes with Lola.
Exactly. I was like, this is like Lola and the Boy Next Door. But well, I said the classic meet cute is Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, why can't you know what? For the longest time,
her.
What does he do?
He insults her.
Oh, the hate to love sort of thing. Yeah. For the longest time I hated him. So I didn't get it when people were like, I love Mr. Darcy. I'm like, he's such a douche canoe. How can you like him?
Did you ever come around?
I feel like I've come around a little bit, and it's because of like the adaptations. I feel like of Pride and Prejudice, and just like getting to like that trope in other romance novels has made me come around and be like, okay, like I see what's there, but I also still kind of don't like him because he's very insulting at times.
I mean, you're not wrong. He is. He's that guy, which I think is kind of iconic because he's that first of that guy, you know, that I can think of.
Yes.
The first of that guy who's kind of a haughty jerk, but needs to be redeemed.
Is Jace supposed to be a haughty jerk?
I mean, Jace is what I would describe as a charismatic weirdo. Like, sure, Jason's a little bit of a haughty jerk.
He's kind of bad.
You know, he's smirky and he's insulting, but kind of like Will. I think of them both as charismatic weirdos. They're both a little bit too odd to be entirely fit into the you know, Mr. Darcy mold. Like Will first comes off, I think, that way, but as we get to know him, he makes up songs about demon pox and chases, you know, demons around the rose bushes and stuff. He is a weird dude. So
that's why we love him.
I am a believer in the charismatic weirdo. I think we like characters who are a little off center, who are a little like odd, who follow their own star kind of thing. So that is really my thing a little bit more than the Mr. Darcy thing. I mean, I love Pride and Prejudice, I always have, but I love all of Jane Austen's books. So all of those romances work for me in different ways. You know, the Mr. Knightley and Emma have been friends forever. So that's that, you know.
I really liked them. I loved Emma, but I hated Mr. Darcy. And like, Emma was pretty mean at times.
It's interesting though, because you're in her head, right? So you get to see the reasoning about why she does the things she does. And it's fascinating the like weight that being a protagonist carries, because I mean, and it's interesting. So I'll ask you if you have like a favorite unlikable protagonist, because I think one of the really interesting things is if you're in somebody's head, you want what they want. And even if what they want, even if they're kind of obnoxious, you're generally on their side.
Yeah. I mean, I keep thinking of TV shows before books because, like, I've read so many books. I'm like, but Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, did you watch that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
My gosh.
Tough one to sympathize
with. She
does
some intense stuff, but I'm, like, rooting for her so hard, even though what she's doing is very weird and stalkerish sometimes. I'm like, oh, my gosh, please get away with this.
He wants it so much. And I think, you know, when you're, like, having someone protagonist, you want what they want. And also the more they want something, the more you're on their side, because wanting something drives the story. So, you know, the fact that she wants this stuff so bad, why does she move across the country? Like, it's crazy. Crazy thing to do. But like, that's why. But
like, you also have that little part of you that always thinks like, what if I did that? That would be insanity. But like, let me watch her do it and live through that. You know, she does all these little things that when you're younger and you like have a crush on someone or obsessing over them, you think, but never do. Right. And that's what made it so fun, because you're just like watching it play out and seeing how batshit things can get because she's doing these things. It's hilarious. Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is totally true. We sympathize with the active protagonist. You know, we have a lot of, I think one of the things that drives us bananas about protagonists is when they don't want to engage with the story. You know, they don't want to be in the story. They're like, why am I here? I want to run away if they're passive. So like, you know, we love an active protagonist, even if the stuff they're doing is bananas. You know? Do
you have a favorite?
I mean, I'm very prejudiced on this topic, but Jude from Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Obviously, I worked with Holly's my writing partner, so I know this.
Yes.
But Jude is kind of awful in a lot of ways. And like, she kills people and hides them under her bed. And spoiler, but actually not as much as one as you might think. And yeah, she wants what she wants so much, you know, and you get kind of why she wants the things she wants. She's lived this life that's been sort of divested of her having agency and power, so she wants power. And I think, you know, to me that, you know, I felt, you know, very, very much with her on the whole ride. I was like, I want Jude. She wants whatever she wants. I don't really care. Like, as she should get it. She wants
Yeah, no, you can totally get behind it if you know the reasoning. Like,
yeah, because you're in their head and you're like, I get why you're doing the things you're
that's
doing.
what makes a great, like, I was gonna say anti-hero. Is anti-hero villain
Kind of gray scale.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's right, exactly. I think that is one of the things that makes a great complicated sort of gray character is like, you know, they may not do the things you would like them to do, but you kind of sympathize with their reasoning.
Yeah. Yeah, for Better Together, I like originally was gonna make one of the twins, one of the sisters, like steal her other sister's identity and like go off. And I thought that'd be really fun, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't want to write a character this dark. She's gonna get in so much trouble. Like, this is illegal. She's gonna have to like leave her sister locked in a room while she goes and steals her identity.
Adventuring, and her sister's like, let me out. Well, okay, so I have a question. So the mom, I think in Better there does something pretty bad. I don't want to spoil it for people, but it's pretty bad. I was pretty mad at her. So what do you think makes a character's actions irredeemable or redeemable?
Yes. So I feel like this was something that I thought about a lot. I'm like, is the mom redeemable enough, even though she did something terrible? But I feel like in a way, the same sort of way that you sympathize with a protagonist that's doing something bad, like once you start to hear more of her reasoning, you could see how it could happen and roll out of control. And if you're young and kind of just don't know what to do and you make the worst choice in a fit of anxiety, that it can get out of hand. And I know in the early draft she was just too terrible. And I worked really hard toward the end to try to like give a light at the end of that tunnel. Like, she's going to really, admit to her wrongdoings and really like try to change for them. But I was also like really thinking about like the millennial generation. I feel like our parents really encouraged us to, not all parents obviously, but like it was like a saying, like, go for your dreams, like do that thing that's hard and try. And if you believe in yourself, you'll get there. And so my thought process with the mom and the dad was like, what if, they wanted so hard to accomplish these dreams, they put it in front of everything, in front of like their family. And I was kind of thinking of like La La Land kind of inspired me to go that route. How they ended up choosing their careers over each other. And that was a really captivating concept because you don't usually see that in movies you think that are going to be a love story. You get to the end of that movie and you're kind of like, how do I feel about this? They didn't get together. And
right. It is really interesting.
Is that a spoiler? Sorry for everyone.
Well, that was the end of it. I mean, I've already seen it, but I agree. Like, it is super unusual because the idea is that you're always supposed to choose love over everything else, right?
Yeah.
People don't always. And it's an interesting story, I think, when they don't, especially when it's a woman, because women are absolutely supposed to prioritize love, romantic love, and family over all other things. So to me, it's always fascinating to meet a female character that doesn't do that, like the Mom in the Hours or Amy in Gone Girl. And you're just like, this feels transgressive because this is so not what we're told women are supposed to prioritize. And I think it's really interesting. It's a really interesting choice.
Yeah, I feel like it's fun to go down that route because you have to explore like the way that you would find them redeemable. Like, how do you redeem a person like this? And I know some people have said like, oh, a parent would never do that, but there are definitely parents that would do that. Like, there are people.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, I guess you could have the question about what a good parent would do, but in terms of what parents would do, they've done all. I mean, absolutely, you can find it.
They've done everything.
I'm a huge true crime fan. I love true crime, and so I listen to all the murder podcasts and watch the murder. I like everybody, but I'm fascinated by the things that people will do. I think that's why sort of we like true crime. Is the extreme behavior of people. And you're like, no, there's literally nothing people will not do.
Yeah, no, they will do anything terrible and it will surprise you, but not surprise you. Because like people can be terrible.
And they can be really, truly weird choices. All right, I feel like we're going really dark here. So
yeah, we're going dark, and I'm just like looking at the chat,
like murdered.
Let's see. Should we take some questions?
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. People in the chat, throw some questions at us. And we have like 15 minutes left and we can answer them. I saw some person asking like for writing advice, but like they're way up in the chat now. So if you want to come back and ask a question, please do so.
Let's see the chat, so you're going to have to field the questions.
Okay. Yes, will do. Yeah, I have like the YouTube window up right next to our little studio thing here. What characters from the Shadowhunters universe and Better Together would be friends?
Oh man.
I feel like Emma and Jamie might clash at first, but then get along.
I think that's probably true. What about Siri?
Siri. Oh, you know, I'm thinking of all the Lady Midnight characters right now because they're like in this time period.
I'm sort of like trying to figure out the time travel aspect of it. I mean, what I love about Siri is that she's like this prim and proper like ballerina, but she also likes metal.
Yeah.
So I do love that about her. But the fact that she is a little bit is kind of has this prim and proper aspect made me think of Christina, who is that, but does in fact lack the thrash metal aspect.
I definitely think they'd get along. Like Siri likes quieter. I feel like she feels more comfortable around people who aren't as like loud and boisterous.
So maybe like
yeah, probably more like Tessa, Gem,
yeah.
sort of calmer people who aren't as weird because she's like so weirded out by the weird stuff in the beginning, but I think it grows on her and she
definitely like, you know,
arcs to be more open there. Feel like Izzy and Christina and Siri.
I mean, that makes sense, sure.
Yeah, no, I feel like Siri would kind of be the friend that's kind of quiet and just like enjoying being there when around Izzy.
She's so cool. Izzy's not what I would call quiet, but sure.
Like she'd just hang around and be like, "This is cool."
Zahara and Simon being friends, they got a lot of pop culture references and stuff, you know, in common.
Yes, yeah, and Simon and his band, like she'd enjoy that.
Yes, that would definitely be the case.
Let's see. Cassie, as an experienced author, what's your advice for Christine as a newer author, taking risk versus being safe?
I mean, I think of Christine as an experienced author. This is her second. I don't think she needs one.
I don't feel like an experienced author.
Okay, I'll tell you.
You've written so many books.
You'll never feel like an experienced author. This is my advice. You'll never be like, I'm done. I have learned everything. I hit the end of learning. Like you will always feel like there's more for you to learn. And I would just say that, you know, I mean, my advice for every author would be to, with every book, set yourself a new challenge. Every book is about learning to write that book. It will always be different. You're never going to be like, I've already written a book. I can write another book. It's going to be the same. It's never the same. And they're all different. And I think
you still go through the roller coaster of like feeling like you like can't write this book and like you don't know what you're doing and then like come back around and all that stuff.
So
still happening.
Oh, totally. Yes. I'm sorry. That never goes away. If you're hoping that will go, it's never going to go away. You just have to learn to live with it. I think you do eventually. So like I said, Holly Black and I were writing partners. So one of the things that we do, I think, for each other is like, I'll be like, I hate this book. I will never finish it. I don't know why I decided to do this. This was a crazy thing that I chose to do. Why have I decided to, you know, tell a story from 11 people's point of view?
Oh my gosh. That's such a big undertaking. Like, I don't know how you do that.
I don't know why I chose to do that. That was a terrible idea. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I like it. You know, there are aspects of it that I do enjoy or I wouldn't have done it, but there are definitely points where it drives you nuts. And so I think one of the things we do for each other is we always, in every book, hit that point where like, this is the worst book I've ever written. This is going to end my career. This is so terrible. Everyone's going to hate it. And so we remind each other that we've been there before. You know, you've been there with your last.
That's nice.
Book. You were there with the book before that. Remember when you said everyone was going to hate this book? Remember when you said everyone was going to hate this book? So I think that's useful to have.
It's rough, but it's nice to have it. Yeah, it's so nice to have somebody there like remind you back and forth.
And I think you just have to know that that stuff is normal, that you hit walls with books where you're just like, I will never get through this. I don't know what this book is about. You know, I don't know how to untie this knot of a problem. You know, I don't know how to get through this particular aspect. And I think, you know, it's actually just helpful to know that happens to everybody.
It's just part of the process.
Sadly.
We got a fun question. Let's see. 2 questions that I want to know this one. Would you ever write a contemporary novel?
Ooh. I would write a contemporary novel. I love reading them. It's one of those things, I love reading them, and I can't figure out like the key sometimes to like how people make them like fun and exciting, because I've written fantasy my whole life. And so when I'm like, whoa, something needs to happen, I have, you know, a group of demons or zombies burst into the room. So I'm like, how do you keep the stakes up? You know, how do you like do this? So I'm always fascinated by the skills that it takes to write like a realistic contemporary novel. But I would love to do
I think the complete opposite for me and mindset. Like, there's so much more that you have to think about with a fantasy novel. Everyone's always asking me, like, Christine, you read so much fantasy. Like, are you going to write a fantasy? And I'm just like, not right now. But like, if I have an idea and I want to tackle that, like, like the 11 point of view, not that you have to do 11 point of views, but like just writing 2 point of views. I was like, oh my God, how do you get full arcs like that for everybody? And my books would be way too long. If I did any more, like I thought I was going to do 3 for my next book, but I was like, no. I'm going to go back to 1 for this one. So my book's not super long contemporary.
Yeah, it is. The more point of views you put in, the more your book will. I generally budget 100 pages for every point of view, even if it's a minor character point of view. I'm like, you're going to give yourself another 100 pages. So you just have to know that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where, you know, I would write a contemporary. I love the genre, but like I've never had an idea for one.
Had the idea you wanted to do.
You know, I've had ideas for historical, like realistic fiction, but not contemporary, actually.
Cool. I mean, I was going to say that feels like contemporary, but obviously it's historical. It's not. It's like the exact opposite. But like just a non-fantastical book is what I'm.
Yes, like, I definitely
had
definitely ideas for non-fantastical books, but they have been historical. So I don't know why, but that seems to be the way my brain works. That's
still great. I'd love to read historical fiction from you. It'd be so fun.
Well, it will happen.
It will happen.
Is there a genre that you would like, if you were going to have to pick a genre that wasn't sort of contemporary, you know, romance, relationships, what would you think you would pick? I
mean, I guess like it would just be, I would call it fantasy, but it would probably be really close to contemporary. Like
I have fantastical elements in your contemporary. It's happy haunted, like, right?
A smidgen. Yeah. Just the happy haunted. Like, and that's what I like. I like to believe that magic could happen in our regular world. And like some people don't really won't buy into that, but I love buying into that. Like I just feel like it makes life feel more magical to believe that something like that could just randomly happen to you. And just
I also think it's an intrinsic aspect of like rom-coms because you're already you're buying a fantastical view of love and fate, right? So the idea that you could throw a coin into a fountain and make a wish and it would affect your real life is just part of rom-coms. It's sort of in the DNA. So I sort of read it as being just, it didn't surprise me. I was like, magic glitter, but like to be read so much as being in the sort of tradition and the DNA of romantic comedy.
Yeah, it is totally. And like, I love that. That's my favorite. Like the fate, like I love to believe in fate and like the universe taking all that into consideration. So I feel like that sort of aspect will probably drop into all my books, but I'll still call them contemporary because they are. They're just like they definitely are.
Rom-coms with a like icing of fantasy, kind of like fantasy. But like it does reminds me of like movies like Serendipity, things like that, or Groundhog Day. Right?
Like 17 Again is my go-to. Like I love 17 Again.
People don't talk about those as fantasy movies. They talk about them as romantic comedies. And that's what I mean. It's that kind of magic because it's the universe kind of reaches in to be like, here is the thing. Let me show you how you're on the wrong path. And I really think that in some ways it started with It's a Wonderful Life. And it was such a
Yes.
huge movie and such a big hit, and it literally changed the way people made movies. And so you have this kind of small piece of magic that comes into somebody's kind of daily life, and it is like, you know, daily life magic. It's about like showing you the things in your life that are important.
Yeah.
Now,
And like, it's so fun to go there in a story because you don't get to do that. Like, it's that wish fulfillment aspect of it is the, I don't know, the part that like makes you giddy when you're watching it. That's why I love 17 Again so much. 17 Again, people like never call that a rom-com, even though it definitely is, because the lead, the lead is a guy. That's
yes,
why.
I know, right? I'm like, that's a rom-com. What else is it? It's a rom-com. It's a comedy with romance.
For sure.
Is a rom-com, but you're right, because the main character is a teenage boy. People call it, I guess, a comedy, but leave off the romance, but it is in fact a rom-com. You're right, it's a classic rom-com.
It's definitely, yeah, no, it's one of the best. It's one of the most, I feel like, under talked about great rom-coms.
I loved it.
Let's see if we have any more questions.
I mean, it has the going back to high school trope, which I love, like Never Been Kissed.
Yes.
Like, who doesn't want to do their high school years over better?
So, it's so fun because you obviously know so much better. Like, just like 5 years later, you're like, wow, I did that wrong.
Oh my God, why did I do those things? I could totally go back and do this way better now.
Yeah, it's so fun to dig it. I mean, obviously, I did that with Gemba Better. It's just like the going back to college sort of aspect of it. You know so much better just a few years later.
Yeah.
I wanted to do one of these questions was, okay, someone asked who in Better Together would you ship with Cassie's Shadowhunter characters? And I feel like I would just, no, they don't ship as well with Will, but like I always want to ship everyone with Will. Maybe Jamie would be interesting with Julian. I keep like, I feel like she would call him on any and all shit. And then they'd kind of argue, but maybe it would be like the hate to love sort of fun. I don't know.
Theory. There's
Ellen,
there's Ariadne, there's Anna, there's a lot of ladies.
There's so many people. I always also want to ship everyone with Anna because she's so fun. I always want to see more of her.
I think that would be a fun ship. I don't know if it would last.
It would. I don't know if it would last, but like I think it would be really fun because Siri would definitely be really timid, but I feel like attracted to her really chill, kind of calming coolness that she has. It's just a swagger.
She's got the swag. I wish I had that, but she's got the swag, and she's also really good at like, you know, any kind of like stressed out people or conflict. She's like, lie flat, have some tea, have some gossip.
She knows how to say the right thing that you need to hear in the moment.
That is why she has been very popular with the ladies.
She is wonderful. I'm excited to see more of her. I was like so disappointed we can get a nice little, never mind. I don't want to say anything. What am I doing? But I just want to see more. I want to see more of her and Ariadne.
Anna in Chain of Thorns. I've been writing her, so she was on my mind anyway.
Nice. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the hour.
One more question, and
we can do one more here. Let's see. I gotta get like a good question for the last one. Okay. A lot of writer's block questions, but I feel like I've heard that answered that so many times, and you must get it all the time.
And like it doesn't like affect everybody.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Who do you relate to most strongly of all of your characters?
Romeo.
Yeah.
Gosh. I mean, I guess I would say it's kind of a toss-up. Like Lucy, I relate to a lot because she's a writer. And so I put a lot of my own stuff of being a writer, especially when I was young, into her. Because I had this like really heinous like multi-journal epic called The Parking Lot Chronicles. Because everything that happened at my high school happened in the parking lot because this was California, so everybody drove. So I would just write like the drama and excitement of life in the parking lot and people's relationships and whatnot.
That's so fun.
In the book, I would have lost those and then had to pick up the pieces of my life afterwards.
Oh my God.
Like, it's like the sister mailing the letters into all the boys. You know, like in the book, I would absolutely have lost that because all the characters were the people in my high school. And I was writing like all the weird adventures for them and their relationships with other people and whatnot. So I feel like that's what Lucy's doing, basically. Like she's taking her life and she's filtering it into this fiction.
Yes.
And so I really relate to her in that level because that was definitely something I did. But I also relate to Tessa because I read when I was a kid. I mean, I've talked about reading all my parents' books. I read everything, good stuff, bad stuff, everything. So does Tessa. And Simon, I always related to, I think, partly because he's Jewish and partly because he's a mundane who immediately gets killed the moment he enters the Shadowhunters world, which
gets killed so many times.
Repeatedly. And I'm like, that would totally happen to me. I would be killed and then they would bring me back from the dead just so they could kill me again.
I was just the right. Did you save those stories from your parking lot? The parking lot chronicles. That's so great.
I'm either gonna burn them or they'll be buried with me or something.
I did something similar, but like in elementary school, I wrote like a chapter about every kid in my class because I read those Wayside stories.
Stories from Sideways School or something like that.
Yes. And I loved them. And I was like, I'm going to write my own version of that book. And I'm glad those are gone. I don't know what I said in there, but that was so much fun to write. But yeah, out of my characters in Better Together, I've been getting this question a lot, obviously, like in the past 2 days. And it's so hard to choose because obviously, like I relate to them in different ways. Like you have
pieces of yourself into everybody.
Piece of yourself. Yeah, I think I have to pick Siri because I'm definitely more like her. But like there's definitely the pieces of me in both of them. And I feel for both of their plights and in the Shadowhunter series, I definitely would pick Tessa too. Like, Tessa is so wonderful and relatable.
Oh, I'm glad you like her. I love Tessa, and definitely, I made sure that like on her list of books, it was not just classics that she read a lot of, like of the day, like just sort of pop fiction, because I was like, that's how readers are. We read everything, you know, and we don't just sit there reading Moby Dick. We read literally everything we get our hands on, and I think that honestly that. Just in terms of writing advice, would be my writing advice is read everything. Like read everything that you can outside of your comfort zone. Read genres you don't think that you normally would like. Read books that you don't know off the top of your head whether you would be interested in them or not. You know, you're never wasting your time. You're always learning something and you're always sort of stretching yourself. And I think that's like the most important thing. And my advice.
Agreed. Thank you so much for all of your wise words advice. I always think of your advice when I'm like writing and like having writer's block. I feel like I heard you talk about that once a while ago and I'm always like, okay, I got to back up. I made a mistake and like got to figure out what it is and like just erase what I wrote because it's not working. That's great advice.
Well, congratulations on the launch of your book. It's been wonderful to see you go from being this amazing, reviewer and YouTuber to being this amazing writer. And I wish you all more success.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming. This has been so cool. And Better Together is available everywhere. Link in the description below. Thank you so much. Let's see. How do I end the broadcast? There we go.